Roger is an American Legion Rider and has ridden 13 Legacy Scholarship runs. He is also a life member of the Disabled American Veterans. He retired from the Army in January 1996 and was a computer technician for Mercy Hospital in Iowa City until his retirement in 2017. It's with great honor that I call up Roger Norfolk.
He didn't know I was going to test him by shining a light in his eyes.
That was my excuse, by the way. That's why I read that word. Thank you for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that I'd like to do today is talk about Memorial Day. And Happy Memorial Day is really not an appropriate greeting. This picture, to me, shows some of the respect and some of the gravitas of what today's about. This color guard was actually at a retirement ceremony for a lieutenant general that came here to this post and dedicated our memorial out front. As these guys came through the fog, it was sort of those, like when the guys come through the cornfield in the field of dreams. I want to teach a little civics lesson because a lot of people get confused on the three, I'm going to call them memorial holidays. Armed Forces Day, third Saturday in May. That was a couple weeks ago. That focuses on the people that are still in uniform. Veterans Day. Veterans Day are the people that have come out of the uniform. And Memorial Day is for those that could never get the chance to take the uniform off. Now that's a key point, and that's what I'll bring on through the presentation. But I'm going to start with a commercial announcement, if you will. Something that the Legion has as a program that is very important, and it's become more important to me as the years have progressed. And that's Be the One. There are a lot of military suicides. Those are deaths that normally are from the demons that follow them from service. But beyond that, far beyond that, I doubt there's a person in this room that hasn't been affected by suicide in one way or another. A family member, a friend of a family member, or just an acquaintance. If you've been on that edge, and many of us have been there, and you know what I'm saying, maybe there's somebody that saved you. Maybe divine intervention. But everyone in this room can be that person for someone. If you know someone that's in danger, and it doesn't have to be obvious, maybe it's an older person that you just haven't heard from a while, call and make sure that they know they're still watched after. But it's important for us to do that. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And most religions of the world have that same thought in it. So, as one of the main things you take from this today, please consider being that person for someone else who is in trouble. So now let's go on with Memorial Day. Day before yesterday, I saw a meme on the internet. You know everything on the internet is true. But this really sums things up. Memorial Day is the most expensive holiday on the calendar. Every hot dog, every hamburger, every spin around the lake, or drink with family and friends is a debt purchased by others. The day is not about all who have served. That comes up in November. Today is in honor of those who have paid in life and blood, whose moms never saw them again, whose dads wept in private, whose wives raised kids alone, and whose kids only remembered them from pictures. This isn't simply a day off. This is a day to remember that others have paid the ultimate price for every free breath you take. Now, I'm not saying that Memorial Day shouldn't be when we think of others. I miss my dad, I miss my mother, and that comes up a lot on Memorial Day. There's nothing wrong with that. Or a barbecue, or a trip to the pool, or a trip to the lake. But you need to remember what that basic thought is, the reason the day exists. And that's for those who have fallen. So let's talk about people who've fallen. July 1st to the 3rd, 1863. Many of you know that's Gettysburg. Gettysburg was the single bloodiest battle in American history, with between 46,000 and 51,000 soldiers from both armies lost. The entire population estimate of Marion in 2023 was 41,000. Not even up to the 46,000. If the entire population of Marion was to pass, think of that. Now, if you can easily wrap your head around that, you're better than I am at it. Because the loss of that, when I watch Saving Private Ryan and the people that are storming the beach, I can't imagine it. And in this battle, in this picture, you see that the soldiers are shoulder to shoulder marching into withering enemy fire. I served 20 years as a combat arms officer. I don't know that I could do that. And here the people had the courage and they paid the price for us. Let's talk about Antietam. Antietam remains the bloodiest single day in American history with 22,727 dead and missing. Now, not everybody can see the pictures. I'm going to step over here behind Robert because he's a good block for me. These two pictures were coming along at that time. They could take a picture where before that they'd have drawings. This is a famous ditch in Antietam. People tried to cross it many times. Those are actual bodies piled up in it. And at the White House, where that caisson is, the bodies actually were piled that deep from the battle, not from recovering from it. I can't wrap my head around it. So let's talk about some soldiers. Let's talk first about people in this area that were valiant soldiers. The first one, Sergeant James Elson. I gave a Memorial Day speech at Shellsburg a few years ago, and James Elson is buried in their cemetery. A lot of them didn't know they had a Medal of Honor winner in their cemetery. He was a person that was awarded this because he was one of the flag bearers. When you don't have radios, you don't have trumpets that can be heard over the chaos of the battle, the flags were how the battle was controlled. He was bearing a flag and advanced to the point to try to plant it in the enemy's ramparts. And for that, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Notice though, the action was in 1863 and he was awarded in 1891. Not a fast process. The one down below, you may know the name of Sal Ginta. He's from Hiawatha. He was the first living Congressional of Honor recipient after the Vietnam War. When James came back, he actually then moved to Shellsburg. He was their postmaster, and then he was a sheriff. Sal is still giving inspirational speeches. So both of those came back and lived a good life. Talk about another person that lived a good life. This is William Amos Floyd Norfolk, my dad. On the left, that's a picture when he went into the Civilian Conservation Corps. If you don't know about the Civilian Conservation Corps, when the economy was really bad, the government came up with some programs and hired young people to go do jobs that weren't things they normally would even know about. Didn't pay them a lot, but they fed them, and they had some money they could send to their families. Now the judge may have said, son, you either go to jail or you go join the CCC. I'm not sure. Dad had a spunk to him. And if you look at the picture there on the right, you can see the gleam in his eye and the smile on his face. He lived a very good life. However, my dad was a prisoner of war of the Japanese. When the Philippines fell, he was on Corregidor. So I'll tell you a little story about him. First, I'll tell you about that uniform. When I saw this picture, I said, Dad, what was that uniform? He says, I don't know. When I was in training, they gave it to me. He said, put it on, took my picture, and took it away. I never saw it again. Bill enlisted 7 February 1941 at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. His training was to be an anti-aircraft machine gunner. He departed for the Philippines on 31 March and arrived on 22 April. That's not a lot of time between when you enlist and you're sending off to wasn't a war zone yet, but a battle. Most of you know the date of 7 December 1941 is the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked. Very few people know that on the 8th, they attacked the Philippines, and they brought their infantry this time. They overran the Philippines, and on the 9th of March is when the main Philippines had to surrender. They ran out of food, they ran out of ammo, they had no other choice. May 5th and 6th, Corregidor, which was an island in Manila Bay. It had control of that deep water port that the Japanese really wanted. They finally overran it on the 6th, and Corregidor fell. The people that were there were surrendered because they had run out of ammo and everything, and they're on a rock. There's no supplies anyplace. He then made it to Cabanatuan prisoner of war camp and was there for a few months. If you know about the Bataan Death March, they marched them from Luzon Peninsula up to primarily Camp O'Donnell. Cabanatuan is just a little bit over from that. He was a little bit behind that first date, if we called it Bataan Death March Phase 1 and Phase 2. He then, by hell ships, was taken to Hoten prisoner of war camp in Mukden, Manchuria. If you've ever heard about the hell ships, imagine a huge cargo ship. Imagine that this is the hold, and we put 4 times the number of people in here right now, where there's not enough room to lay down. Everyone must stay standing. A lot of people suffocated. They died from lack of sanitation, lack of food. Now, he was rescued by the Soviets in August of 1945. If you know your geography, and I don't well enough, Russia declared war on the Japanese towards the end of the World War II, and they were the forces that came through and liberated them. What few people know about is the Japanese fairly openly practiced biological warfare testing on their prisoners of war. My dad once told me about waking up and seeing a Japanese officer waving a feather over another soldier that was asleep. That's one way that you can distribute the vector for a biological agent. So this is Dad towards his last few years. He came back, he got a job, he had his kids, and he lived well. He loved his family, he loved his grandkids, and he loved to work. You give him some broken tools and tell him to go make something, and he was just in heaven. He's just what he was in for. He loved to eat because he'd been starved for so long. During his last few years, before that, he was active in the American Legion. He had a national committee appointment. I believe he was a district commander, and I know he was in many county meetings as well. He also was active in the VFW and the 40 and 8. So he was a Legionnaire like us. During his time in the hands of the Japanese, actually just before 27 April, Corregidor had fallen, he was wounded by shrapnel. In May of 42, he was bayoneted in the leg. And at some time during his imprisonment, a Japanese soldier had hit him up the side of the head with a rifle butt and broken his left eardrum. He was in hospitals for over a year. When he returned, he got an honorable discharge in December of 46. This is a picture, the last picture I know of that was taken of him. It was during Memorial Day in his nursing home. He was too weak to stand, and he didn't know it. He'd often try to get up and he'd fall, and they'd have to call and say, yeah, your husband fell again. My mother standing there holding his arm, supporting him while he saluted as the national anthem was played. He was a heck of a guy. But today is not about Bill. Prisoner of war and all that he went through and all of his contributions is not what Memorial Day is. Memorial Day is against those that died. Allow me to introduce Captain Philip Baldwin, a proud Missouri guy. He worked to put his wife through college, and then she worked to put him through college. He went to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, because they had an Air Force ROTC detachment there. And I was honored to administer the oath of office, commission him as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. Our families stayed close together. We got together often. His last assignment, he was assigned to Lakenheath, England, in an F-111 squadron, and his bomber went in upside down in training. He didn't get a chance to take off the uniform. You only have so many brothers. You see the white dot there on the gravestone. Many people have not heard about the tradition of coins. So here's a comic that I'm going to paraphrase. The young boy says to the father, "Dad, why are you putting all of the coins on the graves?" And the father said, "Well, it's a tradition. To do so shows the family that someone came paying respect to the person. A penny is that you visited. A nickel is that you were in basic training with them. A dime is that you served with them someplace else," which is why I put a dime on Phil's grave. And a quarter is you were with them when they died. On my dad's grave in Palmyra, Missouri, I visit not as often as I used to. There is a discolored place on his gravestone for every time I go there and put a quarter there. And the sun has bleached around it. They'll leave it there. We all have traditions, and that's just one more. There's a big one that's going on in Arlington now where people are going to show up with probably satchels full of pennies and put a penny on every one of the gravestones that someone cared enough to visit the grave. It's a great tradition. So I'm going to talk now. The reason I got these is to keep my mind on point. I don't know if everybody knows about Canadians' traditions. Canada celebrates their Memorial Day and Veterans Day kind of together. So I'm going to show a clip to you, and Denny, if you'd kill the lights, please, for me.
Good morning, shoppers. At 11 o'clock on this 11th day of November, we'd like to invite you to share with us 2 minutes of silence in honor of our veterans. They fought and some died for their homeland. They fought and some died, now it's our land. Look at his little child, there's no fear in her eyes. Could he not show respect for other dads who have died? Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who went over. In peace may they rest, may we never forget why they died. It's a pittance of time. God forgive me for wanting to strike him. Give me strength so as not to be like him. My heart pounds in my breast, fingers pressed to my lips. My throat wants to bawl out, my tongue barely resists. But 2 minutes I will bide. It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who went over. In peace may they rest, may we never forget why they died. It's a pittance of time. Read the letters and poems of the heroes at home. They have casualties, battles, and fears of their own. There's a price to be paid if you go, if you stay. Freedom's fought for and won in numerous ways. Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls all over. May we never forget our young become vets at the end of life. It's a pittance of time. It takes courage to fight in your own war. It takes courage to fight someone else's war. Our peacekeepers tell of their own living hell. They bring hope to foreign lands that hate mongers can't kill. Take 2 minutes, would you mind? It's a pittance of time for the boys and the girls who go over. In peacetime our best still don battle dress and lay their lives on the line. It's a pittance of time. In peace may they rest, lest we forget why they died. Take a pittance of time.
Manny, could you hit the lights again, please? In 2000, Congress passed a law to help emphasize the real meaning of Memorial Day. The National Moment of Remembrance Act encourages all Americans to pause for a full minute at 3 p.m. and do just as we've seen, give a pittance of time. Now, there are many traditions that we have. This should be one of them. In my family, my father-in-law passed away, and we have a toast each Christmas as we get together to the old poop. I keep my dad's prisoner of war tag on my desk. And to the fallen, I thank you for your kind attention.